You hand them the map, and they still ask you for directions. You pour out your soul in paragraphs, and they reply with a single word. You chase a shadow that keeps retreating, bleeding your energy onto pavement that refuses to hold your weight. Stop talking. Stop justifying. Stop begging the empty room to recognize your worth. The most expensive currency you possess is not your time, it's your attention, and you have been giving it away to people who do not know how to count it back. Listen to the truth you have been avoiding. Every time you explain yourself, you are shrinking. Every time you chase approval, you are teaching them how to treat you. The moment you stop performing for the cheap applause, the moment you close your mouth and let the results breathe, you step into a different dimension. Not a quiet one, a dangerous one. The kind where men and women move like tectonic plates, unseen, inevitable, and utterly unbothered. Think about that. I'll say it again. You were not built to negotiate your own value, yet here you are, drafting mental apologies before you even speak. Here you are, overthinking a simple question, rewriting your tone, softening your edges so you don't spook the people who never intended to run with you. You hand them context they didn't ask for. You give them timelines they will ignore. You trade your peace for a temporary illusion of connection, and then wonder why your chest feels hollow when the conversation ends. So let me tell you something. The exhaustion you carry is not from working too hard. It's from performing too much. Let's trace it back to the origin. Picture the younger version of you, sitting in a room where love felt conditional, where silence was weaponized, and speaking up was the only way to prove you existed. You learned early that if you didn't explain your motives, people assumed the worst. If you didn't chase their approval, they drifted toward the loudest voice in the room. You internalized a brutal equation. Visibility equals safety. So you became the oversharer, the overcommitter, the one who texts first, who stays late to fix mistakes you didn't make, who bends until your spine aches just to keep the bridge from collapsing. And what did it cost you? Everything that couldn't be measured in a text message. Here's what most people don't understand. Chasing is not devotion. It's fear wearing a disguise. Explaining is not clarity. It's panic dressed as logic. When you constantly broadcast your next move, you are not building trust. You are begging for permission to exist. And the world does not reward permission seekers. It rewards presence. It rewards the ones who move quietly, who let the work echo louder than the words ever could. You see, the emotional drain is real. It's the weight of unsaid expectations. It's the late-night mental replays where you dissect a single sentence, wondering if you sounded too eager, too cold, too much. Ooh. It's the slow leak of your identity as you contort yourself into whatever shape they find convenient. You sacrifice your boundaries on the altar of their comfort. You trade your vision for their timeline, and then you wonder why you feel invisible, why the goal feels heavier, why the discipline you preach to everyone else starts slipping through your own fingers. Not only that, but you are hemorrhaging time, the one thing you cannot earn back. Think about the hours spent crafting messages to people who will read them and forget. Think about the weekends lost convincing others of a path they are not walking. Think about the quiet moments stolen from your own evolution because you were too busy managing their perception of you. Mortality doesn't care about your excuses. The grave doesn't ask how well you explained yourself. It only asks what you built while you had breath in your lungs. But here's the thing. The moment you stop chasing, the game changes. The moment you stop explaining, the noise dies down. The people who only wanted your attention because it was easy will drift away. Good. Let them. That is not a loss. That is filtration. You are clearing space for the kind of silence that breeds power, for the kind of unbothered execution that compounds into empires, for the kind of identity that doesn't need a mirror to know it's real. Remember this. You do not owe anyone a translation of your ambition. You do not need their validation to ignite your fire. The cost of overgiving is not just fatigue. It's the slow erosion of your purpose. It's waking up 5 years later, realizing you spent your prime proving you deserve to be seen instead of building something undeniable. That's the difference between a loud life and a lasting one. One burns bright and fast. The other burns clean, deep, and long enough to outlive every single person who ever doubted you. Let me be clear. You are allowed to want more. You are allowed to demand better. but you will never claim it by begging for a seat at a table that was built to keep you small. Stand your ground. Withdraw the energy you've been leaking into empty conversations. Let them wonder why you stopped responding. Let them invent theories. You already know the truth. You're done performing. You're done negotiating. You're stepping into a new frequency, and it starts with one brutal choice. Your silence becomes your power. Now, we strip the romance away and look at the wiring. Silence is not avoidance. It is architecture. It is the deliberate withholding of reaction so you can recalibrate your direction. When you stop broadcasting, you start observing. When you stop reacting, you start directing. Strategic silence is not the absence of voice. It's the presence of control. And control requires rules, not suggestions, not vibes. Hard, uncompromising boundaries that you enforce on yourself before the world even gets the chance to test them. Here's the first rule. Never negotiate in real time. When provocation comes, when the question feels like a trap, when the comment stings just enough to make you want to defend your name, breathe. Let the wave hit. Let it crash. Let it recede. The person throwing the bait is fishing for a reaction, not a resolution. They want you to prove you're rattled so they can file you under predictable. Don't hand them the folder. Step back. Process the input privately. Respond only when the emotion has metabolized into strategy. That gap between stimulus and response is where champions are forged. I'll say it again. That gap is your training ground. But here's the thing. Rule 2 is harder. You will not announce the plan. You will execute it. The moment you verbalize your goal, your brain releases a premature hit of dopamine that tricks you into feeling like you've already achieved it. That chemical shortcut kills momentum. It replaces sweat with satisfaction. So you keep the blueprint locked in the vault. You don't share the launch date. You don't reveal the pivot. You don't tell them about the grind behind closed doors. You let the results do the heavy lifting. When people ask what you've been doing, you give them the answer that ends the interrogation. You'll see. Not to be arrogant, to be accurate. Rule 3 is the pivot point. You will detach validation from execution. This is where 90% of the dreamers bleed out. They tie their worth to the applause. If the post gets likes, they push forward. If the message goes unanswered, they stall. If the room stays quiet, they assume the work failed. That is a fragile operating system. You must build an internal dashboard that runs on completion, not confirmation. You do the work because it aligns with your vision. You refine the craft because it honors your sacrifice. You show up in the dark because your purpose demands it, not because the crowd is watching. Gratitude isn't thanking the audience. Gratitude is showing reverence for the discipline itself. Let me tell you a story about a man who understood this before it had a name. He grew up 3 miles from everything he wanted, surrounded by voices that said the math didn't work. He didn't argue. He didn't write threads defending his potential. He walked to the corner, set up a table, and started moving product while the skeptics slept. Years passed. They called it a hustle. He called it breathing. Then the cameras came, then the offers, then the questions. How did you know it would pay off? He smiled. I didn't. I just knew I wouldn't stop. The silence wasn't empty. It was loaded. Every unsaid word was a brick. Every ignored comment was a layer. He didn't chase the culture. He forced the culture to chase him. Now, think about where that story intersects with yours. The man didn't win because he was immune to doubt. He won because he stopped handing doubt the microphone. You've been giving your internal dialogue to external validation, letting the loudest room dictate your tempo, cut the cord. When they ask why you're distant, it's because you're calibrating. When they ask why you don't post, it's because you're building. When they ask why you stopped explaining, it's because you realized explanation is the tax you pay for being misunderstood by people who chose not to understand. Contrast this with the common belief that transparency equals trust. It doesn't. Consistency equals trust. Showing up when it's inconvenient equals trust. Delivering when it's quiet equals trust. You don't earn respect by broadcasting your intentions. You earn it by fulfilling them. The point is this. Silence is not passive. It is highly active. It requires more courage than speech. It requires faith in a timeline you cannot control. It requires the willingness to be misunderstood in the short term so you can be undeniable in the long term. Let me be clear about the mechanics. Strategic silence creates a vacuum. Human nature hates a vacuum. When you stop feeding the noise starves. When you stop chasing, the chasers turn around. When you stop explaining, the explanations lose their weight. You are no longer playing their game. You are playing chess while they're still learning checkers. You let them move. You let them overcommit. You let them reveal their tells. Then you strike with precision, not volume. You don't need to shout. You just need to be accurate. Not only that, but you will notice the shift in your nervous system. The constant ping of anxiety fades. The compulsive need to check their status evaporates. Your breath deepens. Your sleep resets. Your focus sharpens like a blade because you are no longer dividing your cognitive load between creation and performance. You are pouring every ounce into execution. That is where the impossible turn possible. Not through louder declarations, but through deeper concentration. Remember this, you are not ignoring people to punish them. You are protecting your energy to produce for them. There is a sacred difference. One comes from ego, the other comes from commitment. One drains, the other compounds. You are building a legacy that does not require a press release. You are cultivating a standard that speaks through repetition, and repetition cannot be rushed. It cannot be forced. It can only be honored day after day, in the quiet, with the door closed, with the world locked out. Your silence becomes your power. Now we cross into the identity shift. This is not about tactics. This is about becoming. You don't adopt silence to look strong. You adopt it because you finally see the truth. Strength is not performed. It is embodied. The moment you stop reacting, you start operating. The moment you stop seeking external calibration, you install an internal compass. That is the discipline of unbothered execution. It is not the absence of emotion. It is the mastery of it. It is choosing purpose over panic, consistency over convenience, and long-term compound growth over short-term dopamine spikes. Think about your mornings. The first hour sets the trajectory for the next 16. What are you doing in that sacred window? Scrolling through other people's highlight reels, reading messages that demand your emotional labor, arguing in comment sections with strangers who will never know your name. Or are you sitting in the stillness, aligning your breath, reviewing your goal, and committing to one irreversible action? The difference between the two is not time management. It is identity management. You cannot build a cathedral if you keep treating the foundation like a suggestion box. But here's the thing. Consistency is boring until it's brutal. It doesn't feel like a montage. It feels like repetition. It feels like showing up when the inspiration is gone. It feels like writing the draft when the doubt is loud. It feels like lifting the weight when the mirror lies. That is where faith lives, not in the feeling, in the function. You trust the process not because it's easy, but because it's the only math that works. You don't ring the bell after every rep. You don't demand applause after every milestone. You just add another layer, then another, until the structure becomes undeniable. Here's what most people don't understand about compounding habits. The first 3 weeks are pure friction. You are breaking old neural pathways. You are fighting the ghost of who you used to be. The temptation to announce your progress is at its highest. The urge to explain your struggle to someone who doesn't care is at its peak. Resist it. The friction is the signal. It means you're actually moving. The day you stop complaining about the weight is the day you start earning the strength. That's the threshold. That's where the amateur quits and the architect begins. Not only that, but you will start seeing doubt differently. Doubt used to be a stop sign. Now it's a checkpoint. When the inner voice whispers you're falling behind, you don't panic. You adjust. You fall forward. You let the stumble become data. You analyze the misstep. You recalibrate your stance. You don't explain the stumble to the crowd. You just get back up. That's the courage. That's the discipline. That's the unbothered posture of someone who knows the timeline is non-negotiable. Mortality is ticking. The clock doesn't care about your excuses. It only cares about your output. Let me be clear about work ethic. It is not punishment. It is sacred sacrifice. You are trading temporary comfort for permanent freedom. You are exchanging cheap validation for quiet confidence. You are giving up the right to be understood today so you can be respected tomorrow. That is not martyrdom. That is strategy. Every hour you spend in deep focus is a down payment on your legacy. Every boundary you enforce is a fence around your purpose. Every time you choose silence over debate, you are investing in the only account that matters, your own evolution. So let me tell you something about the people who will never get it. They will call you cold. They will call you distant. They will say you've changed. Smile, nod, keep moving. You haven't changed. You've clarified. You've stripped away the noise so the signal can breathe. You are no longer available for low-frequency transactions. You are operating on a different bandwidth, and bandwidth cannot be negotiated. It must be maintained through sleep, through repetition, through the daily choice to believe in the unseen. Remember this, the darkest moment is always right before the breakthrough, not because fate is cruel, because the resistance is testing your commitment. The doubt will scream loudest when the results are about to materialize. The old habits will knock on your door when the new identity is about to take root. Do not open it. Do not explain yourself to the ghosts. Do not chase the comfort of the familiar. Stand your ground. Keep going. The momentum is building. It's invisible now. It's quiet now. But quiet is how empires start. I'll say it again. You are not waiting for permission. You are claiming it through execution. You are not hoping for a sign. You are becoming the sign. You are not asking for a seat. You are building the room. That is what happens when you stop leaking energy into empty conversations. That is what happens when you redirect every ounce into your craft. That is what happens when you let the results speak in a language no one can translate, only recognize. The point is this: identity is not fixed. It is forged. You don't find yourself by asking the mirror. You build yourself by showing up in the workshop day after day with the tools of discipline, gratitude, and relentless focus. You don't fix your flaws. You outgrow them. You replace the need to be liked with the hunger to be capable. You trade explanation for demonstration. You trade chasing for attracting. You trade begging for earning. And the moment you make that switch, the gravity changes. Opportunities stop being hunted. They start being recognized. Not only that, but you will notice how the world bends towards certainty. People are drawn to the ones who know what they're doing. Not because they're loud, because they're consistent. Because they don't flinch when the room goes quiet. Because they don't break when the comment section turns hostile. Because they've already had the argument with themselves, won the peace, and moved on to the work. That unbothered energy is magnetic. It doesn't need a stage. It creates one. Think about the years ahead. 5 from now, 10 from now. When you look back, you won't remember the arguments you won online. You won't remember the paragraphs you drafted to people who didn't read them. You will remember the early mornings, the quiet hours, the decisions to stay focused when everything around you begged for your distraction. You will remember the choice to believe in the invisible work. You will remember the gratitude for the struggle, because it carved you into someone who didn't need to prove anything to anyone. You will remember how you changed the world, not by shouting at it, but by refusing to let it break you. Your silence becomes your power. Now, feel the weight of what you've carried. Feel the years spent translating yourself for people who refuse to learn the language. Feel the exhaustion of overgiving to rooms that didn't value the currency. Feel the quiet realization that it ends today, not with a speech, not with a confrontation, not with a viral moment that fades by Tuesday. It ends with a decision, a single irreversible pivot. You close the browser, you lock the phone, you step into the arena with nothing but your hands, your habits, and your word, and you work. This is not about hiding. This is about harnessing. This is not about running away. This is about standing firm. This is not about indifference. This is about precision. You are done negotiating your worth. You are done auctioning your attention. You are done begging for clarity from people who profit from your confusion. You are stepping into the frequency where action speaks louder than announcement, where results drown out rhetoric, where your presence alone commands the room because you no longer need to ask for space. You occupy it. But here's the thing. The hardest part isn't starting. It's sustaining. It's the Tuesday at 6 in the morning when no one is watching. It's the draft after the 10th rejection. It's the rep after the plateau. It's the choice to keep going when the dopamine is gone and only duty remains. That is where legends are made. Not in the spotlight, in the shadows. Not in the applause, in the ache. Not in the explanation, in the execution. You don't ring the bell, you keep swinging, you don't chase the wave, you become the water. Let me be clear about the timeline. It's non-renewable. Every second you spend defending a past that doesn't exist is a second stolen from a future you could be building. Mortality isn't a threat, It's a filter. It forces you to choose what matters, and what matters is the work, the daily discipline, the quiet commitment, the sacred sacrifice of your ego on the altar of your purpose. You don't get it back by asking. You get it by earning it. You claim it by showing up, unbothered, unapologetic, and utterly focused. Think about the people who told you to wait, to soften, to explain, to chase, to beg for a place that was never meant to hold you. Let them watch, not out of spite, out of proof. You are not here to win arguments. You are here to build evidence. Evidence of your faith. Evidence of your grit. Evidence that you fell forward, got back up, and kept walking while they stayed behind debating the route. The darkest moment is already behind you. This is your finest hour. The silence you've cultivated is about to echo. So let me tell you something about what comes next. The noise will try to return. It will whisper that you should check your status, that you should post the win, that you should defend the progress against a critic who hasn't done half the work you have. Ignore it. Protect the vault. Let the compound interest do the talking. Let the consistency do the heavy lifting. Let the results speak so clearly that no translation is ever needed. You are not here to be loud. You are here to be undeniable. Remember this. The world will always reward the ones who move in quiet certainty, the ones who don't chase validation because they already own their standard, the ones who don't explain their path because the footsteps are enough, the ones who don't beg for a seat because they brought the hammer and built their own. That is the posture you are claiming today, not as a reaction, as a recognition. You see? The power was never out there. It was always in the pause, in the breath, in the choice to withhold, to calibrate, to execute, and to trust the math. The point is this: you don't need their permission to become exceptional. You don't need their attention to prove your existence. You don't need their applause to validate your sacrifice. You only need your discipline, your consistency, your courage to fall forward, your commitment to stay the course, your faith in the unseen, your gratitude for the struggle, your refusal to ring the bell until the structure is complete. Impossible turned possible, not by shouting, by building. Now, stand up, clear the desk, lock the distractions, step into the arena with nothing but your word and your will. Let them wonder why you stopped responding. Let them invent reasons for your absence. You already know the truth. You're not missing. You're manufacturing. You're not silent. You're loading. You're not finished. You're focused. The time for explaining is over. The time for executing is now. Close your mouth. Open your hands. Build in the quiet.